79 years since the end of the Second World War in Europe. While many remember the major battles, the end of the war, and the liberation of countries, there is a painful chapter that is forgotten. During and after the war, millions of women and girls were victims of horrific sexual violence. This is a story that has been silenced for decades, but now we are calling for these women's suffering to be acknowledged. World War II brought unimaginable suffering to women and girls, with millions being sexually abused. Women held in concentration camps, especially those of Jewish, Romani, and Sinti backgrounds, as well as those involved in resistance movements, were particularly targeted. In the areas occupied by Nazi forces, such as France, Poland, and the Soviet Union, rapes were widespread. German soldiers were often the perpetrators, but sexual violence was not limited to them. Even the Allied forces, after the war, were responsible for rapes in post-war Germany. For many of these women, their trauma didn't end with the war. In fact, it was just the beginning. Rape often resulted in unwanted pregnancies, and these women rarely had a choice about whether to keep the child. Both mother and child were often stigmatized, isolated, and left to suffer in silence. The pain of these experiences was rarely acknowledged, and the women who survived had little chance to heal. After the war, these women's experiences were largely ignored. The stories of sexual violence were suppressed by society, and many women were too ashamed or afraid to speak out. The lack of psychological support meant that these women could not begin to heal from the trauma they had experienced. This created a cycle of pain that affected not just the survivors, but also their children and grandchildren in a process known as transgenerational trauma. The wounds these women carried were passed down, shaping families and communities for generations. In recognition of the 79th anniversary of the war's end, Bright Life has called for society to remember these women and their suffering. It is a chance to honor their strength and courage, and to show solidarity with all survivors of sexual violence worldwide. These women's experiences are part of history, and their voices deserve to be heard. If you are one of them who want to honor the strength and courage of these women, then like and share this video and leave a comment to show your love for them.